Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
Welcome to Stress-Free Living. I'm Ray Samich. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I'd like to introduce all of you to my longtime radio colleague, co-host of this program, and my dear friend and spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Oh, wonderful, Ray. How are you? Welcome back.
Thank you. I know for our regular listeners that are so faithful to us, we apologize. I was traveling for 2 weeks in a row and was unable to be with you live. Hopefully you were able to still enjoy some of the pre-recorded programs. And speaking of those, we have so many of those that we have posted in our YouTube channel, Stress-Free Living Radio. Just check that out on the YouTube system, Stress-Free Living Radio, and you'll find so many of our shows. They're titled that you can download at your convenience, listen to, and share with others if there may be a topic that you think is of interest to them. Ratanjit, this topic is one that is near and dear to my heart today because I don't know why, but people come to me all the time and are in a difficult, challenged state, and they ask me for help. And sometimes I can give that rather easily. It's a little question about how to handle this or how to handle that. And being around a long time, after many years on earth, you learn a lot of things and you have experience. But sometimes they ask questions that I just don't have an answer to. And they have problems that I just don't have a solution to. And I want to give them hope. Because in my mind, if they don't have hope, then they don't have any solution ever possible, because they're just always going to be mired in desperation and frustration and discouragement. So what I'm asking from you today is, in those really tough times, how can we find reasons to have hope? When things are really challenging and maybe even terrible, how can we find hope?
Basically, hope is a very stimulating element. It gives you reason to live. It gives you your energy back. And ultimately, the hope, if you see, is vested in our wants and needs. And ultimately, if we replace the hope by gratefulness, then we really get control of our life. And gratefulness, ultimately, gratefulness comes from being aware of what is given to us. We are given ultimately a life, which is the most precious thing, most amazing thing which is given to us. And once we park ourselves in that gratefulness, it is higher than hope. It gives you stimulants which hope doesn't provide. It gives you much more control over life than hope does. Most of us, because we don't practice gratefulness, once in a while we are grateful, we are always focused on the second element, which is hope, right?
Respectfully, if they are in a mode of severe frustration, and some real world examples that people can relate to, okay, they have a child who is causing tremendous hardship for a parent, going through some real challenges in the child's life, or maybe the child is imprisoned, and in trouble with the law, and his life or her life is um, in question in terms of what's going to happen to them for the next 50 years. They have a death of a loved one or a severe illness, which in some cases I think is even worse because they know that this loved one has dementia. And that was one of the cases of somebody that came to me, and they're getting worse and worse, and they're just watching this happen. And they just know that it's not going to be a good situation for the next number of years. Those types of things, for me to come back and say just be grateful, okay, it is like, no, that's not a bridge that they can cross that easily. Okay, I maybe I can get them there, maybe that can be attained at some level, but when they are at a point where you said be grateful for life, they're almost wishing they didn't have life. I mean, they're at a point where they would rather say, take me. Okay, let me die so that so that I don't have to endure this, because they don't know how they're going to get through it. It's that severe, it's that tragic. So I can't tell them be grateful for life, because they're saying I can't be grateful for my life. I don't know how to handle this problem. So is there something else, or what else can I tell them that would be meaningful to give them, give them a reason? I know I'm not speaking clearly, but it's a real challenge for these people, and I don't know what to say.
We live life. We have done shows before. We live life not from the knowledge, not from everything, but basically inherited habits. Our habits continuously are part in the body mode of what is in it for me. I want things. I have decided my happiness depends on if I have this particular home, and my happiness depends on if I have the air conditioning in the house. If the air conditioning goes away, suddenly my happiness is snatched away from me. And if electricity is basically completely cut off, and suddenly I would be very abandoned because I have a habit of these things. Any time we cultivated those habits, my habits are to have my loved one around me. My habits are my have enough food, enough things around me. Any of those things get sacrificed temporarily or permanently, we will have definitely pain. We would have those habits. And we have never cultivated habit of living in gratefulness. We have never acquired the inner peace which is gifted to us by gratefulness. And gratefulness also has to be unconditional. And gratefulness, in absence of gratefulness, we would always want to have expectations. Expect Hope is tied to our expectations, and hope is tied to basically our glorified image of future, or what we should have, what we deserve to have, what we are supposed to have. And that when it is somehow escapes from us, instead of working towards it, instead of acquiring towards that goal, we basically get depressed and tired of why it happened to me. It doesn't happen to this and that person who is not as good as I am, but I am a church-going person. I am a religious person. I am faithful. Why this happened to me, God? So we blame situations, even God, for those situations, and we become hopeless. And hope is really a, uh, another gift, which is we cannot take it for granted. We only be thankful for what we have, and eventually uh, hoping that this will happen to us. But our pleasures or our peace of mind should not be completely tied to that uh, ultimate happening, which we call hope. Right.
You said that, yeah, hope is tied to expectations is one of the things I wrote down that you said. And we've talked a lot about expectations and how expectations almost always lead us um, to disappointment, okay? Because the world, unfortunately, often, most of the time, doesn't live up to our expectations. But in the moment of the crisis, in the moment of the severest challenge, the hope and the expectation of getting better has to be there. I mean, if we're at our lowest possible point, our expectation has to be that it's going to improve. I mean, we're certainly not going to put in our brain that now I'm going from this absolute terrible point and it's going to get worse. I mean, that is, there's no hope there. So it's logical that our human brain and our desire for wants and our desire for our needs, and we think we need things we don't even need, but our desire for happiness is a part of our expectations in that moment, you know. And when you say that, and I know you were just using examples, but when you say that, you know, we want air conditioning and the air conditioning goes out and we're disappointed, yes, I mean, we've all experienced something like that. But I mean, I'm talking something at such a more severe level than that. I'm talking about, you know, going through things again where you almost say, I don't want to live. I don't want to survive because I can't be a part of something this extremely sad and dreadful and disappointing. So in that moment, shouldn't our expectations be higher? I mean, shouldn't that be a part of our brain trying to help us get through this by say it's going to get better in an hour, it's going to get better next week, is going to be better next month, is going to be better? Isn't, you know, even if it's for the reason of saying that you're going to get over the shock of it, you're not going to be in the moment of devastation that you are now, because you're going to be able to get through it. When I had a loved one pass away at a young age, my father passed away when I was young, and somebody came to me and says, just take it by 1 minute. Just take 1 minute at a time. Just get through the next minute. Don't think about today, or don't think about next week or next month or the rest of your life. Just get through a minute at a time. And a minute becomes two and becomes three and becomes an hour and becomes a day. And that's the way to get through the worst of times. And that really helped me. It really, because I said, I can handle a minute. I don't know if I can handle the next hour, but I can handle a minute. Isn't that an expectation then of even myself, that I can get through a minute of time? It seems to me that expectations are critically important to help us on the path to having hope.
See, it is most important to understand the concept of expect uh, acceptance.
Okay.
there are two kinds of problems which we are going to confront. One is, say, my loved ones or somebody's death or something which cannot be fixed is destroyed, or something which is a drawback or a failure. So when you accept that, you accept the current situation, and then you work with all your energy, all your talent, all your resources into improving that situation rather than you have two possibility. One is go into depression and feel sorry for yourself, and once you get that on that route, there is no end. You end up getting utterly depressed. The other route is take charge and accept what you cannot change, and what you can change, then change. So more than hope is basically when you are taking charge of the change, you are expecting to make things better. If your hope is tied to that, that's great, because you are hopeful that this is going to happen. Anytime you take a particular project, you visualize the end, right? That motivates you
Right.
to get there, right? That is also a hope, but that is tied into your action. That hope is stimulating and helpful. And just to have hope is a wishful thinking, eventually going to end up in disappointment. So take charge of the situation. Every situation can be divided into two parts. Either you cannot change, you must accept, and other is you can change. Although this could be difficult, although there may be a difficult way, you need somebody else's help, you need whatever else you require. Once you make a plan and work on that situation to change, and ultimately keep the goal in front of you, and this can happen into taking control, and that hope is stimulating. Right?
I like where this is going. I must say, the first part of the show here today, I was wondering if we were going to come up with a solution, but I think you've just laid out the first steps of it. So when we come back from this break, I want to definitely go much further in detail on accepting what we can't change and taking charge of what we can as our means to hope. Because I don't want that hope. I when I talk to people, or when I encounter this myself, I don't want that hope to end in disappointment, because that just adds up to where you can only take so many disappointments in your life. So we want the hope to be meaningful in terms of getting us where we need to be. I think you've laid the plan. We'll talk much more about it on this edition of Stress Free Living. Stay with us. All right. We're touching deep here today. Anybody have any thoughts like to share? Any questions you want me to ask Ratanjit? We've got 90 seconds. Okay, we put everybody to sleep, Ratanjit. Or they're afraid to say something because they're too emotional today.
We did not give them hope.
We're going to give you hope one way or another. Well, we know you're there. We see your names. We see your picture. Hi, Liz. Sandy, welcome. Sahil.
Hello. Sorry, I just joined late, so I don't
That's all
have
right.
anything yet, but thank you.
No,
I'm sure I
no
will later.
worries. No, good, good. Hey, Sahil, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. You have a quick thought or a question?
No question for now. Maybe something will pop up at the end, but I'm really enjoying the discussion on the idea of hope being underpinned by actions, which is meaningful in itself, but hope on its own with no actions is pointless. But yeah, that's a great concept. I'm a big fan of that.
Thank you. Hey, Sandy, welcome.
Hello,
Quick
how are you?
thoughts? Good, good to have you today.
I really like the line of unconditional gratefulness, like just at all times being grateful.
Thank you. We're absolutely going to get back to that. I don't know if that's the first point that you can hit people with when they're down and out, but thank you. Maybe we can. Maybe somebody like you can accept that out of the block, but I think just some people would say, "What? I have nothing to be grateful for," you know. So very good. Thank you. All right, we are coming back in a moment. Welcome back to Stress Free Living. Ratanjit and Ray and yours truly, Ray Samich, joining you today, talking about hope. And can we have reasons for hope? Can we find reasons for hope in those most dire moments that, and just a little aside, Ratanjit, I know we say this all the time. We live our lives and we say, boy, things are tough out there right now, but they really are. I mean, on an international basis, we have so many crises that seem to be at a trigger point. And on a national scale in our homeland, there's so much, so many things that are just, outrageous that are happening with us within our country on a political basis, an economic basis, a moral, ethical basis. There's economically, there's so many question marks for so many people, and the news is starting to really unravel that says, things aren't quite as good as people have said they are in many areas, and people are wondering how the spiral is going to go. I mean, this is a time right now, even for getting personal one-on-one situations, that a lot of people are very worried and very anxious and very concerned about what could happen in the world. So I think in that overall paradigm, when you also are then forced with a crisis within your own family or within your own job or relationship or whatever it might be, it just seems again to like add on. Okay. And people, we do have a limit, right? I mean, I know I certainly accept that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but as humans, there is a limit to how much we can take and how much we can process through our emotions in our brain. Or do you feel that we are empowered somehow to get through even the most desperate or anxious of times?
There are two scenarios. One, when you look at all these problems on earth, somebody said, have faith, be just hopeful, and you leave up to so-called God, and they'll take care of it. So you have a false sanity for the moment. Other is that you understand and realize why this is happening, because you have given critical thinking skills, you have brain, you understand that all the world's problems are because of everyone is part in the human body mode of insecurity, fear, greed, lust, and ego. And their decisions are all made by these. And whenever anyone comes into the power, these things get enhanced. You have more, you want more, because greed. So as a consequence, when we have leaders like Putin and these people, they basically have the capacity of worsening the problem for the sake of their own power grab. And so once you realize that, so now you know that this mindset gets embedded in a human being at a very early stage. So our character is formed when we are 6. And later on, all our knowledge, which is only tools, we use them to satisfy our wants and need. What is in it for me? So now your mission of life, once you realize that you have only 60, 90, 100 years to live, and if you can get involved in making the change in our education system, correct the coming generation, and give them a better universe, this is very stimulating, because you are going to be able to make a difference in the world. So rather than sitting hopeful on one side, why don't you take charge of the situation and make changes? You are not going to do that in one day. And now there is another side of this scenario, hope, which I want to talk once you make a comment on this.
Oh, well, I don't want to deter you from that, because that was obviously a logical change, and I don't want you to forget what you were going to say. But you had just gotten us back to where we were at before the break, and that is taking action. And I did want to pursue that a little bit. So do you want to hold that thought on the other side of it till a little later? Can we do that?
Sure.
Okay. So, but don't forget what it is, because I'm sure it was very empowering. You just said that, critical thinking in our whole world about what's going on and realizing it, and then the secret is to take action. You had said that earlier about accepting for ourselves and our own personal crises, acceptance of what we can't change. And I don't think we really need to spend any time analyzing that. I think as individuals, we know I can't change this. I can't change it that this person died. I can't change it that this person has a disease. I can't change this that I've lost my job that I thought I was going to have forever. I can't change the fact that I've gone through a divorce in a marriage that I thought would last forever. There's certain things we have to accept. And I think we're smart enough to lay that out. The part that I don't know if we are smart enough to do, respectfully, and I'll put myself in this hole to say that I don't know, is what action to take. Okay, what do I do to make it better? I know I can take some action. I know that, if nothing else, I can change my attitude. I know I can do that, but maybe there's a lot of other things that can be done too to improve the situation. How do I assess that, Ratanjit? How do I, in this mode in the state of high emotion, because I'm going through this crisis, how do I analytically and not emotionally determine what my action should be?
Now, typically, when something happens, remember the story of MAD, M-A-D-D, Mothers Against Drunk Driver? When she lost her daughter in the accident because this person was drunk. So instead of sitting there and becoming sad and becoming depressed, she took actions. So now typically our actions are making new laws, or basically all this is absence of understanding the truth, fundamental truth. And unless that truth is understood, we will take wrong actions. meaning well.
Mhm.
So unless we change our minds, human brain in the human being operated by the universal energy present within us, rather than our human body mode of insecurity, fear, greed, and ego, we will not change. Doesn't matter how many thousands of laws we have made. This human mind is so clever, it is always going to find a way to bypass those laws. And we, again, a clever person, when we graduate our students, brightest students, many from Ivy League colleges, and some of these students are the highest contributors for the white collar crime.
Mhm.
So higher education, smartness does not give you a person who is going to make this world as a better place to live. Unless we correct the basic ingredient in a person, and basically when we change those ingredients, basically the who is running your mind, who is controlling your psyche, who is controlling your behavior, your thoughts eventually gets into action, your action eventually gets into your habits, eventually your habits become your character. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. And basically, until you change your thinking, which is the starting seed of anything which is going to happen, if that thinking does not become free of your insecurity, fear, greed, and lust and ego, you are never going to solve these problems of human race. The more technology we have, the higher crimes, more sophisticated crimes we are going to have. So our human race is struggling to make this life of the human beings better. And ultimately, look at our country, which is the richest country in the world. Yet, it is, in spite of spending $3 billion, $3.8 billion on healthcare, we are the sickest country on earth. Because it is vested in greed. Our healthcare system is vested in greed. When you go to hospital, they do unnecessary tests so that they can have a better bill to be collected. And our education system has become financial institutions. Look at the endowments. Many of these Ivy schools have 30, 40 billion dollars of endowment funds, and yet their fee is the highest in the country.
Yeah.
None of that would make sense because they're all driven by the human body mode. The only way to correct this, only way to give you hope, only way to go forward is to correct the character of our coming generation of 6-year-olds. Instead of teaching them how 2-year-old, 3-year-old, where the capital of the world is, how many worldly knowledge they have, we should tell them who they are. What is within them rather than separating God from us. God exists in every possible thing. The divine power which is running your human empire, your human being, and let that divine power run your brain instead of this human body, which is parked in fear, greed, and insecurity and ego running your brain, right?
Wow. So powerful. The you really got me flat-footed here. So I think you've come around full circle. At the beginning of the show, you says it comes down to unconditional gratefulness. That's where hope takes you. And I wasn't willing to go there, and I'm still not, because I think there's still a middle point. We touched on that of acceptance. So I think before we bring up gratefulness in these points, we have to say, listen, there are certain things about this difficult, tragic situation that we'll just have to accept. We don't like it. We don't want it to be that way. It's admittedly not the best thing in the world, but this is what you have to accept. And then I think what I'm hearing, what I've come to comprehend from this, is that before we can take the action we need to, we have to put ourselves back into that mode of gratefulness, that we even have the ability now to take charge and to move forward. And so it's difficult, but it's difficult to do the acceptance part too. And it's difficult then for us to put ourselves into a mode of saying we need to be unconditionally grateful, even for what happened that we don't like. It happened. Now we have the ability to move forward and to make something out of this that maybe was intended all along to show the real purpose of our life.
You know, there
And
was
then I think, go ahead.
there was a, it will explain this, what you are saying, and make a little more sense. I want to draw your attraction, your focus to the book, which was published and became very popular. It was called Secret.
Yeah.
It was about the law of attraction. So what it was, the book was saying, whatever you want, whatever you are hoping for, visualize it, live with it, constantly think about it, and already imagine you are there. And forces of the nature would help you. And ultimately, you will achieve that. Now, basically, if you analyze it, if you understand this, if you are in the human body mode of ego and you want things for yourself, what is it in it for me? You can do all you want to visualize or concentrate or do this thing. It will not happen. Only this law of attraction works when you have an intention of helping somebody. You have a project, like a project which was undertaken by Mahatma Gandhi to free up India. There was no roadmap. He was fighting an empire which has much more higher force. But his intention gave him the wisdom to follow through this. So you will automatically, once you focus gratefully to add value to your society, to even yourself, rather than parking yourself, I want this, it is for me, I deserve this, and I'm going to use the law of attraction to get it. It won't happen. But this law of attraction would work when you have basically intention of adding value. Hope has to be tied to making a difference. Hope is never going to work when it is only intended to make your desire fulfilled, your wants and need fulfilled, your ego being satisfied. That is not where your hope is going to work. Hope is going to be a very powerful force. It is the anticipation of this thing to happen, which is going to transform the life of people around you to the world. It is going to add value. That happens in this whole paradigm of working on this project. Your mind must always be parked in utter gratefulness. Right?
Okay, so when I asked a question a few minutes ago that says, how do we know what action to take? You have ultimately, in a very profound, roundabout way, come up with the idea that we will learn to know what to take action on in a state of utter gratefulness, and which is unconditional, and with the intent of adding the highest value to the world. And if we do that, then our brains will tell us what to do because they're in that mode to figure out what action to take. We've got a few minutes left after the next break. We want to come back. I hope you haven't forgotten the other thing that you wanted to mention, or whatever else.
This is what I wanted to mention. And
Oh, it is. Okay. Well, we then indirectly covered it. Then who knows what we're going to talk about? But we're going to wrap this thing up when we come back in just a few minutes on stress-free living. Please stay with us. All right, everybody. If you've got a thought or an idea, please share it. If not, that's okay too. No pressure.
Sahil, anything else?
I just wanted to say, you just mentioned about visualization, and so basically, one of my favorite athletes, his name is Virat Kohli. He talks about the power of visualization, and he's known for pulling off the most insane comebacks in situations where the team has almost lost the game. But he's thought about how he's going to make it happen before games, and he goes on to do it. But I'm glad you touched upon on that topic, because I try to implement that in my personal life too. But not knowing that there's an element of, oh, you have to think about you're helping people when you're trying to accomplish a certain goal, or when you do visualize it. It's not just about you trying to accomplish it or getting to a certain target, but it's about the overall, the bigger picture. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad you touched on that topic, and that just really like almost flicked a switch within me. So thank you for just mentioning that bit of think about the bigger picture, the goal of how it can have a positive impact on people. So thank you.
Sandy, you have something to say?
Yes, I think I know what Ray means about he doesn't want to go totally to the gratefulness and having it unconditionally. However, the other point I didn't bring up that Ratanjit Singh did was that it's not just being unconditionally grateful, it's doing it all the time. So you see, when it's normal, meaning that it's part of your life at all times, and if something tragic happens, I think you're in a place where you can be grateful from the bottom of your heart versus, hey, this is just a strategy. When you make it part of your daily life, and it's no longer just your
We are back on Stress Free Living, and with apologies because we have such amazing conversations with our guests during our breaks. We're going to continue those after the show. But I tell you, we had two amazing concepts here, two amazing thoughts that I want to bring in so that we can end with these. One was, I'm going to do them in reverse. The last thought that was just shared is that in the times of trouble, in the times of these most severe tragedies, it's really difficult to start being grateful because we've just had something devastating happening. And for anyone to tell you at this point to be grateful, it's like, wait a minute, I can't comprehend that. But if we park ourselves in gratefulness every day, right, Ratanjit, which I know you live your life that way and you tell everyone to, if we already are there when these inevitable difficulties come, which do happen at some level every day and once in a while happen at extreme level, then it really is doable. Then it's believable, right? I mean, that was a thought from one of our guests, but I think he's right on with that.
That's why I mentioned the habit in the beginning.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
don't have we live not the knowledge, not somebody tells us. We live our habits. Until you form a habit of living in unconditional gratefulness, you are not prepared for life. So once a passport is given to us to enter this world, to conduct yourself, you must have a habit of living in unconditional gratefulness. So this habit has to be cultivated when you are 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year old.
Yeah.
If you have not cultivated that habit in that period of your life, it would be very difficult to acquire this habit of living in unconditional gratefulness. And also, once you have this unconditional gratefulness, you have the power of acceptance. You take everything and accept it and analyze it. Can you do something about it, or can you not do anything? So that is how your life should be run. And ultimately, the hope is vested in adding the highest value. That is your ultimate hope of life, rather than having hope of what is in it for me. I want this, I want that. If you have a hope tied into adding the highest value, you will have all these other things happen to you. You would be very successful. And as a result, you will have more money and more success and of everything as a byproduct of adding the highest value. We have it totally reverse. We are going for the things first, but we are not adding the highest value, which is going to generate for you all those successes which we are after, right?
So well said. I think so many times our hopes are tied into things that I want to have happen. I want to receive this. I want this person to have, I want my child to do well. I hope, let's say, I hope my child does well. I hope I get this new car. I hope I get this new job. I hope I get this new relationship. I hope, and they're not really things that I say, okay, I hope that I can do the things to make this happen. We don't insert that little step. We just hope for the result. We don't hope for the ability to take the action in unconditional gratefulness to add the highest value so that that thing happens. And I think that that's a huge distinction that most of us just go right to the result. We don't go to hope that I can add the highest value to get whatever result was intended for me, because that if you're in that mode of adding the highest value, then you're no longer in that greed element that says, I know what I hope for. It's almost like if I put this process into gear, into action, then the universe in its wisdom is going to give me what I'm supposed to have. So it really does shift that paradigm dramatically. The other topic I wanted to get to I'd let you have a comeback thought on that one before we get to the other comment that was made.
It reminds me when I was 6-year-old young child. So one day I come home and I told my dad, I want 100 rupees. That time, 100 rupees was a big amount. So my father said, he said, wait a minute, please tell me what are you going to do with that money? I said, don't ask, but just give it to me. So I threw a tantrum. I started crying. Why don't you give me the $100? So finally, my father sat me down and said, okay, here is 100 rupees. And please tell me, maybe I can give you more. Then it incentivized me to tell him. I told him while crying that this Raju lost his father, and suddenly he cannot afford to pay the tuition of the school and books. And I want to help him. I want to keep him in the school. So my father, instead of giving me 100 rupees, gave me 500 rupees because it's not going to help 100 rupees. He needs higher money.
Mm-hmm.
So similarly, when on one side you have only greed, when my father saw only greed, he was hesitant to give me $100 because he did not know. When he knew it was not greed, it was adding the highest value, he was giving the higher amount of money. So similarly, the divine power, which we call God, has total control of the universe, will give you much higher resources than you need once you are on the path of adding the highest value. Right?
Wonderful. Okay, we have 2 minutes for the last comment, and that was the visualization. You mentioned the secret, and you mentioned as part of this that we have to see what we can accomplish as part of, it goes along perfectly with all of this, that we're in a state of unconditional gratefulness. We're now looking to add the highest value. If we use that secret that says, now I have to visualize it, I have to know that that's real. I have a personal favorite, Roy H. Williams. He's a genius and a philosopher in marketing. And he says, before you can do anything, you have to see it. Before you can go anywhere or accomplish anything, you have to see it in your brain first. And I think that is so relevant to this, because when you're buried in that moment of crises, it's hard to visualize anything except tragedy. But if you can visualize something positive that you can add the highest value with, then it can immediately turn that into a positive momentum to go forward. Any last thoughts on that? You agree?
I agree. Not only you have to visualize the end result, but you have to visualize every step you go through to get there. Because in the process, you will find the drawbacks of some of the steps you have chosen, and you can modify and upgrade those steps. So that is what the greatest athletes do. They go through the whole process in their mind of how they are going to get there. So visualization is basically orchestrating the drill which you are going through. And once it is very clear to you, this is going to happen. Right?
Ratanjit, we'll end it with that. Thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us. Thank you to our wonderful audience, all of our guests here. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. All right. Hit 10 o'clock.
So
Right on the nose.
you're still talking to me?
What?
I said, initially I made you completely
Oh, I didn't know where this was going to go today in those first few minutes. Yes, truth. That's the truth. I wasn't sure how this was what we were going to end up with, but we ended up well, I think. Let's hear what everybody else thinks. Comments from everyone?
I
Now I
just
won't
wanted
cut you
to,
off.
oh, sorry.
No. I just said I won't cut you off, and I just did. Go, Liz. I'm shutting up now.
No, it's okay. No worries. I just want to go back to the comments that, of unconditional gratitude and just kind of share my recent experience with it. So I've been having a gratitude practice in the mornings, maybe for about 4 years, but about 6 weeks ago, I read a book and I started I kind of like 10x my gratitude that I was doing in the mornings with kind of like intensifying the list that I was writing and reasons why. And I put like a post-it note on my computer to make sure that every email that I would write to someone, I was saying sincere thank you to them, maybe once or twice, and just trying to really infuse it unconditionally. And I just can't tell you the difference that's made in just finding more things to be grateful for, and just the compound effect of living that out in a much deeper way, which I think kind of speaks to what you all have been talking about today. So I just wanted to emphasize that I've been doing that recently, and I'm just, I mean, it's kind of, I feel like this, but I'm so grateful that I'm seeing, I don't know, it's just a virtuous cycle that that I've been on right now. And I just wanted to encourage that habit-based work that Ratanjit is talking about.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Gratefulness has to be ultimately unconditional for it to work, because we are taught by these gurus of gratefulness that we must keep a ledger and we must be grateful this, count down all the things we are grateful for. So this is all gratefulness dictated by our wants and needs. Once we have the unconditioned gratefulness, which is not tied to our wants and needs, that is very most powerful gratefulness.
Yeah, I think I've really come to a place where even my most trying, difficult times, that I'm now even grateful for that. And that took me a long time to come around to that. But I agree with you. It has to be anything that happens, just there's a greater order that's happening. And so there is reason to find gratitude in it, even if it's incredibly traumatic and challenging.
So I'll share with you how I learned what is unconditional gratefulness. My daughter, when she was very young, 10 or 12 years of age, and once she missed her school bus. So although it was enough time, so I volunteered to take her to school. So since we have a little more time, I suggested let's stop at McDonald's and get you some food to eat. So while we are having some breakfast, I asked her this question. I said, Nisha, you have been a great child. What if God appears and says, my child, you have been so good. So ask one thing I can grant you. Just one thing. What would you ask God? So now she says, okay, God will allow me to talk to my dad? I said, yeah, you can talk to me. So she says, Dad, if I ask for money, God can really give me money. So suddenly I have so much money that I buying things have no importance. Right now, when I want something and I convince you to get me that, and eventually when I get that thing, it gives me a feeling of gratefulness. And that feeling is most important to me. So now I don't think I want more money. And then she said, what about knowledge? If I ask God to give me all the knowledge of the world, so suddenly people would not like to talk to me because I would be a know-it-all. And right now, when I learn something new, either by reading or by somebody telling me this, I feel if a utter gratefulness come into me. Somehow I feel that feeling of gratefulness. Then suddenly, then she says, what if I ask him to give me a long life? So that is, again, I'm going to be only uh, older person living, all my friends will pass away. So that is not good. So then I said, okay, so what do you want? So after 2-3 minutes of silence, she said, can I ask God to give me that feeling of gratefulness which I get from getting the things or gaining the knowledge without any things I gain or without any knowledge, just that feeling of gratefulness. That is what, when I learn what is unconditional gratefulness is. Right?
No, you shared that once before with me, and I love that story. It's so powerful. Thank you. Sandy, anything you want to say?
No, I've enjoyed very much today. I think just recently I've had some things that have come up that on one hand I could see as a very, very large obstacle to, could be business, life, everything. And initially I did. And, then some of the spiritual masters that I follow, soon, I would say, like within an hour of something happening, I then got reminded again of just the flow and how it goes, and where you can take your mind, or where your mind can take the real you, and I think that's one of the things that Ratanjit Singh mentioned a little bit today about like a depression or anything. Like, your mind can take the real you anywhere, and it's that mind not having, for lack of better words, of training it, then you can get lost in that world. So the constant living in gratefulness at all times, and some have a habit. I mean, I know my family, we always grew up with a saying. We would just say Tan Guru Nanak, great guru, that when something bad would happen, that's when you would say it. You would at that moment say thank you that it happened. And slowly, just that reminder and going back to making that your routine, it does, one, get you over, it keeps you away from that mind that can drag you into depression, and you can live lighter, just a little lighter, and literally not take everything too seriously. So as much as death or disease or these things can be very serious to the body mind, if you can live where Ratanjit Singh's daughter hoped to live, where she says, can I have that? There's a spark of, when something great happens, you feel really good, and then you're immediately grateful. So you feel so good that you're grateful. How do you always remain in that in that sort of space where you're happy, you're grateful, you're enjoying your life, even when the bad things come. And when we say bad, these are things that we perceive as bad, you know? So if there's a belief that, and not everybody believes this, but if there's a belief that, you know, I definitely don't have control of when I was born and when I'm gonna go, if I could agree to those two things, that I don't know when I'm coming or when I'm going, then sometimes some of the things that happen along the journey, even though it could be so, I was just in Lisbon for a spiritual event, and at that event, this lady got killed by dogs, and everybody was like, oh my God. And in this little tiny town of Portugal, they were like, we don't have crazy dogs. And I was there to spend time with a living master and to be there for meditating. And then he mentioned, he's like, look, some of these things, be it disease or death, they're also part of the formula about when it's your time to go. So I could either go because of old age, or I could go because I get hit by a bus. But any one of those two ways, one of those things has to happen for the average human being to believe that I disappeared. If I don't go back up to my apartment from this gym, my wife, my kids would have no idea what happened to me. But if I don't know, if a machine fell on me, whatever, it gives somebody that, okay, this is what happened. But the point is that I don't have control of the time when it happens or how it happens. But there has to be an excuse. So sometimes it's disease, it's like, it could be anything that happens to us, but it definitely does make you a lot more, I can't say grateful at that time, but it does make you a lot more humble. You know, it does bring humility into you, because you could have all the money in the world and get cancer. You could have all the love in the world for your mother, but you can't save her, you know? So it does bring you back to the divine. It does bring you back to humility. And from that point, it's your decision on how you're going to take it. Either you're going to let your mind take you to a place where it's going to put you in a bad place of falling into depression or whatever, or you're going to take it and you're going to say, yep, you know, it's terrible what's happened, but I'm grateful for the times I had with this person. I'm grateful for the times when I did have money. I'm grateful for the times when I did have two eyes. I'm grateful for whatever. And so, you know, I love what Liz is saying and doing. You know, we had been to this Tony Robbins event. We listened to, you know, if you prime like Tony does every morning, part of that priming in the morning is being grateful. And in the beginning, you're like, you know, you might be on day 7 or day 9, and you have 3 minutes of being grateful in your mind. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to run out of things to be grateful. And it's unbelievable that it is unlimited. Once you open your mind to what you could be grateful for, it just keeps going and going, and you keep coming up with ideas, and you start remembering all the things that you can be grateful for. So I kind of rambled on here and shared a lot of stuff, but you know, when I listen to Ratanjit Singh, it again reminds me of these very powerful tools and ways of living. Really, it's a way of living. You know, so on one hand, I understand that Liz says, okay, I've got a morning routine, but I can see what's happening, Liz. You know, you're downplaying your morning routine to this is how I live, you know. And I think that's where we want to be, is live that way. You know, it's nice to have the alarm clocks on that, okay, I get up at 5 and I do this. And then when this happens, I better do that. But you're getting your mind to be trained that this is how you live, you know. So I think that's where we want to be.
Thank you. I totally agree.
You know, you said that you will never run out of things you are grateful for. When you move from things, you know, if you like good food, somebody gives you good food and you are always grateful for. Supposing you lost the taste buds, you cannot feel anything. Suddenly the good and bad food will say the same. So you should be grateful for the capacity to taste rather than great food. Similarly, when you see something, so you're enjoying everything, suddenly you are in coma. So all the great things which are yours, you cannot enjoy because you are in the coma. So you should be grateful for being awake, being alive. So ultimately, we have to be grateful for the life in me, which is giving me capacity to realize the goodness of things around me, rather than being grateful for the things. We be grateful for the capacity to realize that they are in front of you, they are mine. And gratefulness gives you your best because it reduces the hormones which cause stress. This basically puts your mind to positive attitude, and it gives you neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonins, which basically make you happy. So all these things happen in the condition of gratefulness, and it opens your bliss center in your mind, so you can feel more happiness, more contentment, more joy around you, within you. So all this happens because of condition of gratefulness.
Thank you for taking it one step deeper.
I just want to say thank you so much for this lovely conversation and session that we had today. Some valuable insights from Sandy, Liz, and of course from the two of you. But I'm looking forward to the next session because this one was after a few weeks, so I was really anticipating this one. But I'm so glad I was here. And if I may, just a small suggestion, maybe a topic suggestion for any one of the future topics. I noticed you touched a little bit on structured visualization. So maybe in one of the future sessions, if you could cover the topic like structured visualizations, how we can use that to achieve goals, and if you could share a few anecdotes of how you have maybe accomplished that with regards to your business life, I think I'd really enjoy that, and I hope others do too.
Yeah, that sounds great. Great idea.
Yeah. Ratanjit, you want to give that a try?
Whatever you say, you are the boss.
Oh.
I have to
Well,
keep
no,
my
I
job.
think we have to learn from these young people that are so much smarter than me. So I like it. Let's do that next week.
Get him. I'm a happy man. Thank you.
Okay. We'll give it a shot.
Okay, send me
All right, everybody.
wordings for the
Thank
title.
you. Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate
Thank you,
it.
guys.
Thank
Good to be
you.
with you.
This was
Thanks.
wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys.
Hopefully see you next week.